Time to welcome our next guest joining us live in studio, Aaron Bedard, Canadian veteran, represented Canada, I don't know if represented is the right word, but was in Afghanistan with the Canadian military, suffers from PTSD, uses cannabis, an advocate for veterans' rights. Lots of stuff to talk to you about. We appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Just first off, for those who are fortunate enough not to be in the military and be into a situation that you were in, give us a sense of when were you in Afghanistan?
Well, I served from 2002 to 2010, and I was in the first combat tour in 2006 when we moved our operations into Kandahar, and went through a 6-month tour. Tours are usually 6 to 9 months, and it was technically the first time we were in combat operations with the same rules of engagement since Korea 50 years before, so it was quite an adventure.
Adventure is an interesting word to use. That gives a certain sense of it, maybe romanticized a little bit. Adventure, we talked about this before, and I'll ask you again. Is it possible to go over there and experience what you did and not come back suffering from PTSD?
Well, everybody in life goes through stress. We all have ways of managing it. Some do it well, some don't. Some have a very little tolerance to stress. And in the military, we're trained to learn to manage it. And going over there, it's like going to the Olympics of dealing with stress. And combat arms, the people that go outside the wire, they have the ultimate challenge. And even if you are near the breaking point, you still have a job to finish. And you have to push it down, keep breathing, keep your heart rate down, and get through it, because you don't want to hurt the person next to you. You don't want to let anybody down. You want to become a liability out there when things are on.
Can you describe what it's like to actually have PTSD and how you've kind of been
Do you know you have it?
Is it something you come back and...
I came back home here at Pitt Meadows, just local to my mom, and right away she could see that there was something right. And with summer months there in 06, barely sleeping at all, and we were getting put onto another operation, onto another, in the driver's seat in my labs there, like just leaning against the engine compartment while it's running there and catching a little bit of Z's, and then it'd come over the radio, okay, let's go again. You get up, and so little naps here and there. So it, couple months of that sustained, it's not healthy. And I was drinking Red Bulls one after another to keep up, and caffeine, so wherever I could get it, caffeine gums we were getting, and it definitely has some wear on your body. Your adrenals get exhausted, and you're worn right down to zero by the end.
Do you realize that when it's happening to you?
You don't have time to realize that. You got to do your job. We got to push that all down, and we see people right next to us, people we served with, that get killed, and you got to keep going, and you got to push it down. Like I turned into a pretty cold-hearted soldier there through those summer months, because I had to.
Just to survive.
I had to protect myself, and I had to protect the people next to me. We had to get the job done.
So when you come home and you realize that something's off, or I'm not,
sleep's off.
Yeah,
dreams are bad.
Right. What's your first step? What do you do?
Dogs barking behind me at my mom's, and it's like a shotgun going off, and there's all these triggers, and you don't understand it. And you, as a soldier, we know that if we start displaying issues at work, or if we come forward and say that we need to seek treatment, 99% of the time we're not going to make it back to the unit. That's going to be the end of your career as soon as you put your hand up. The Canadian Armed Forces are working very hard now to make that not the case, not the appearance, the optics, in order to make people comfortable coming forward. But it's very hard. When you got it, you got it. So there's hundreds, if not thousands, of soldiers off the back of Afghanistan that are just trying to keep with the job. And are you aware of it? No. I mean, you have a bunch of drinks, the average person, and you still think you're okay and you can get through the night okay. Right. Some people think it's okay, they'll get behind the wheel of their car, and you're not always self-aware. And it was only at the point where a year later I really started to melt down. I was on a training exercise, and our vehicle actually got hit by lightning. And we are right at the point of contact to get hit by lightning. It's a kaboom instantly. Yes. It was like an IED. And that was 3-4 months before I finally had to leave the unit. It really triggered me, and that was the start of a downturn. I started self-medicating, drinking heavily to try and push this down, to try and kill the anxiety, and I was starting to build up in rage, and it was just, and then it got to this breaking point where I had to leave the unit, and it was a really hard go. Right away they started pushing pharmaceuticals on me, and they were actually making it worse.
Really?
Well, I was very broken, and I was only getting a 1 hour visit once a week. And like when you get your car broken down, you want to be at work on Monday to go to the mechanic. You imagine the mechanic calls you and says, "Yeah, we can fix it, but we're only going to work on it 1 hour a week." You know, it's no, you need something up front, and I didn't have that, so you're forced to try and figure it out on your own. A lot of it, 99% of it, because that's only 1 hour a week out of how many hours a week. So. And so a lot of your ideas about coping, such as self-medicating and just your behavior, the way you decide you're going to react when someone cuts you off, and dozens of other triggers outside in the everyday life there, can really continue you down a downward spiral as far as your self-confidence and how you behave. You can scare away your family, your kids. It's tough.
What kind of options do they give you when you're back home? Like, is it just straight to medication? Like,
that's
here's
the
your
go-to.
fix, right?
The go-to is pharmaceuticals.
Wow.
Yeah.
And since then, so you've kind of...
Where was the turn?
Yeah, when
well,
did
by
you decide?
2008, I was at the point where I was going to take my life. I
Right.
just couldn't take it anymore, and my mom flew up and went and saw that doctor and told her no more meds. Within 5 minutes, she said, "Oh, well, just try one more." And my mom went like that, and we got out of there, and we went to the pharmacist, and right away she said, "I want to see the exact list of everything he's been on." And she was a pharmacy assistant at the time. Right. And she established that there are 3 different periods where I had a moment where I punched a hole through a wall, and a couple other moments there where I rage out of control type of thing. And she asked the pharmacist, like, "These are all high in serotonin, right?" And he said, "Yeah." And my mom, just looking at that list, instantly could see a correlation of that the doctors did not see that were providing these drugs.
It's
And
ridiculous.
it's like one after the other, right? Like,
Yeah.
So how do you end up trying marijuana or cannabis? How does that happen?
That was 2008-09. I got released 2010. I went through the Veterans Transition Program in 2011, which is a peer group of 8-10 soldiers for 10 days to start to get a square one, a foundation, a plan for a few years going forward, and to realize you're not alone and that these triggers are all very similar and they come from a lot of the same things. It's all very similar. And then it wasn't until 2014 in the summer there, a friend of mine, a fellow veteran, his wife gave me a bottle of cannabinoid oil, which doesn't have THC in it.
Right.
It's
CBD,
just something that relaxes your nervous system. She said, I didn't like this. This was for anxiety for me, and I don't like it, so try it. And so I brought it home, and I did it for a couple of days, and I didn't think anything was happening. But my wife, it's, again, like I said earlier, people on the outside will see the differences. My wife's like, this is, you think there's nothing happening, but you've been happy for days. Your sense of humor came back, and you're not getting angry at all, and you're very relaxed. Like, I like you like this, right? And at that time, my wife, we had a code word, Tahiti, which meant time out if we started getting each other going, because it would just spiral and it would get mad, and people would raise voices, and so it quickly went from that to, instead of Tahiti, to go have a puff. Within a year. Me and her had to go through a bit of counseling together, and she had to do a lot of the hard work there. We had to work together to come up with a plan to manage it and an understanding. She, going through the process, understood where these things come from, the anger, and we had to do a lot of hard work. There's a lot of foundational work you have to do to get through this, to get through the dark hole part and come out the light at the end of the tunnel. For me, it was 8 years. If I had cannabinoid oil from day one, the moment I started getting it, it seems to relax your nervous system. I can come sit here right now, I'm on cannabinoid oil right now. I take it first thing in the morning, and it helps just stabilize me, and I start off my day well. And I don't have a lot of anxiety that I would have had. 2012-13, being part of a lawsuit against the government of Canada, we went to Ottawa for my very first time, and immediately we went right into Parliament and went right into the press gallery to do a statement calling out my government that I served. And I'll tell you what, I was horrified, right? Sure. And now here I am. That was before cannabinoid oil, and then now here just November 8th of this year, just before Remembrance Day, we went and did one. And it was complete night and day experience for me. I was able to be in there and just, like I did in war, push that stuff down,
Right.
and just, I got through it, and it's a game changer.
So when you realize that and the light goes off for you, does that become you going, okay, there's other guys that are in the same boat as me? Is that how is that how you get involved in advocacy, or how does it work for you?
Well, I had a very difficult transition. They'd lost my file a number of times, and they love to say to all of us, oh, you slipped through the cracks. You know, the people that handle the administrative ends of your process to leaving the forces love saying, oh, you fell through the cracks, whoops. And it really angered me. And in 2011, I found out about a suicide, a family there that weren't treated well by the Canadian Armed Forces, wanting to know more about what happened to their son. And they were covering it up. And it enraged me enough that I started, took the unusual step to go on social media, and I was very paranoid about doing that.
Right.
And I started finding out about all these systemic problems across the board, dealing with Veteran Affairs Canada and Department of National Defence with their transition process. And I quickly got connected to a lawsuit called the Equitas case, and I became one of the 6 lead plaintiffs on it. There's 6 of us Afghanistan veterans on there. And for 5 years now, it's been 5 years and about 30 days since we filed, and it's a case that's dragged on and on and on. Lawsuits against governments can go on for a decade or more. And yeah, we just went through an election where I thought they promised to stop fighting us in court, and yet 6 months after the election, they took us right back to court and kept going with it. You know, myself and my other key plaintiff that we work closely together, Major Mark Campbell, you know, we had to sit down for a few days right at that period and really dig in and make a commitment and decide that we have to look at this, that we might go on for another 5-10 years.
Yeah, long haul, right.
And so something like cannabinoid oil, I wouldn't have been able to do it without it. I wouldn't have been able to go to Ottawa and advocate and meet with MPs and senators and all these government officials. My heart rate, I'd damn near have a heart attack to try and do it.
Now, what about so obviously you have friends who are veterans as well.
Oh,
have
thousands.
you seen, so in that process, since you guys have been using cannabis to help heal, what are some of the things that have helped other people? Because it's helping you with calming, but what is it doing in other people's lives?
Well, my friend Major Campbell there, he got his legs blown off in an IED ambush. They kicked off an ambush by detonating something right under him.
Right.
And so legs just shredded, and I won't get into details, sorry folks. And then another dozen injuries throughout his body. He was on about 36 pills a day. Wow. And he, in 2011-12, his liver was just going downhill really quick with all that.
Yeah.
It's incredibly toxic stuff, all this stuff he was taking. So he was one of the first people that were active duty D&D who got approved to use medicinal marijuana. And his max he can do is 5 grams a day, use vaporizing. And he can't take the edibles because the way his body works now, it wouldn't start to work naturally. It might take 24 hours and suddenly hit him all at once, and you have a bad reaction. He had tried it, and so he has to vaporize it in his condition because he's got very complex injuries. So he's a 5 gram a day person. There are people out there that have to use edibles and up to 10 grams a day for combinations of traumatic brain injury and the physical injuries from the explosions, plus PTSD. And you'll know that there's sativas, indicas, and hybrids, and it's very complex. And the education piece in this, it really has to catch up to it because
is that as we get closer to July 1st? Is that one of the things that that you're concerned about?
That is the number one most important thing with this going legal, especially for the young folks out there, because life's complex enough, and something that can just take you off in another direction if you're using it to have fun. It's not necessarily a toy in my mind. Like for me, I can't take one of the strong, high-level THCs because I'll have a panic attack. Last year, I'm calling up my mom, I'm freaking out. And so that was the last time I touched that one, right?
So you're sticking, but it's interesting though.
And it can scare someone off of using it at all when you have a bad reaction like that. And really, the young folks there, it needs to be looked at. And I'd say everybody out there, I mean, my family all around me, they see it, they see the benefits with me, and they want to be able to use it just
Yeah.
for stress.
Right.
As they see, oh, you take that in the morning, you just take a little vial of the cannabinoid oil, and it keeps your body all calm. And me, I want to kill my boss. And like
Right.
my mom's
Yeah.
just like, oh, well, she's near retirement, and,
Right.
and she's now in a stress, sort of natural, constant state of stress in
Right.
her lifestyle. That
As she gets closer
she
to the
needs
unknown,
to find
yes,
something
yeah.
like that just calms the nervous system down. It's a great medicine in that form.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, I've heard many people say that it's always medicinal.
Yeah, it has to
Because
be.
of this, again, it's whether it's the stress, just the calming feeling, and whether it's got THC or not, and again, depends now, there's so much strength.
Yeah.
But just in the general sense, it's always,
Yeah.
for that reason. You're just back, from what I understand, you were across Canada, talking to
Little tour.
folks.
Because they wanted to take us back to court, I had to ramp up. I started doing this thing called Veteran Guerrilla Radio Live on Facebook in order to get more comfortable with speaking and
Right.
presenting and
You
using
seem
my
solid, my
hands.
Doing
friend.
awesome, yeah.
Yeah, it's a year and a half later now. I'm starting
Ah.
to get comfortable with it. That was a big push for that. And then the next thing was to start a movement leading up to the next election, because we aren't seeing enough traction and quick movement that we need to see on the vet file and the return of the pension for life option that was taken away
Yeah.
with the new Veterans Charter in 2006, which replaced it with a lump sum approach
Right.
and a very bureaucratic, complex, insurance modeled approach, which is deny, and you gotta fight for it. And so here with this cross-Canada trip that I just did, we're doing a walk for veterans in every single province, as many as possible this next year, at least about 6 of them. And it's to create outreach to the general public, to help educate them, and also for the veterans to be able to have an event where it's not Remembrance Day, where the days get darker and shorter and you're leading into the dark time of year.
Right.
And there's a lot of people can get into a state of depression in that time of year. And I'm not dissuading anyone from going to Remembrance Day, but I've always wanted to see something where in the spring, when the flowers open, veterans open up about their plans for their summer, and to start off on June 3rd, this coming 2018, to go for a walk with the general public, strap some medals on and be comfortable with the general public being able to walk with them for 5Ks and be able to ask them questions about their service. You mean if someone's got a teenage kid that wants to join, they can ask some questions, and it can be a very positive kumbaya.
Oh yeah, no,
get
for
together.
sure. We'll see if there's any questions from our viewers, but it's interesting. Some guy like here, you're able to talk about your experiences. I've come across veterans over the years, and again, they don't want any part. They don't want to talk about.
They're not ready.
Right.
A lot of
Is
people,
that-
the
is
wounds
that
are still very fresh,
right.
and they haven't been managed well, and yeah, they don't have that square one yet.
Right, because that seems to be, because nothing is more impactful. I found, whether it's, no matter how old, say, the kids are, when a veteran comes into the classroom, and he's able to actually talk about things, it's amazing, as I've seen kids' faces, just because it's not fake, it's not a movie, it's not TV.
Yeah.
No, this guy's telling you about real
real
life. And there's something about that you can pick up on that when someone's telling you their experience.
Yeah.
You can feel it's real and it's not, and it's just something. So, yeah, I guess you're right. The more of you guys that can, I guess, get the foundation that can share, the better it's going to be, I would think.
Finding that peace within yourself, right?
Yeah.
That you can get out there and
Yeah, that's one of the number one things that I've learned from an individual that wasn't a doctor, was a member of the Vancouver Police Department of 35 years, a former detective that told me his son came back from Afghanistan, got hit by a claymore, almost got killed, and his son, of course, had some stressors
Right.
and some triggers out of that, and he told his son, and he told me too, to keep telling the hardest stories, the stories that make you cry, keep telling them until you don't. You got to get it out.
Yeah.
Because a lot of men, the male ego is our worst enemy in a lot of cases with this sort of stuff.
Well,
that we just want to
you
hold
told
it in,
me
like
you
you
were
hold
hurt.
on to a firecracker and then.
yeah.
You told me just when you first got over to Afghanistan and you were injured right off the bat and you didn't want
Yeah.
to say anything because you didn't want to come out.
Yeah.
You just
It's the
got
same
there,
thing, right? It's you hear football players get the concussion, but they don't, or the hockey player, they don't tell that their bell was rung because they don't want to come out. They don't want to.
It's the masculine thing too, and especially being a
Yeah.
veteran, that is as masculine as you can get in the sense of
Yeah. But outside of the physical, I'm talking about the mental
Yeah,
here.
Yeah.
no, for sure.
Men think it's some kind of feminine thing to be able to talk about your feelings.
Yeah.
And the fact that with PTSD, we have not very good control when you first get to that point, or you get to the breaking point. Our emotions are all over the place, and unfortunately, then we choose to go always to anger.
Right.
And like so many men do, it's a big problem. Men need to learn to be able to talk about their feelings, and do it amongst men. Like with me, I have a couple groups of vets that I talk to here local and over on the island, and we get together as much as we can. And we have a check-in for 10 minutes, and we have a beer or two at somewhere behind closed doors, and check in with each other. And, you know, when you have suddenly, you know, 300 years of experience in a room, you get a couple old vets that are like twice our age that went down those roads and had to learn to cope and manage these things. And then next thing you know, you're getting some strategies from people, and then you're growing, and it's getting out, and you feel you're not alone, and then you're starting to get some closure.
Wow.
But we're not there yet.
No,
There's a long way to go.
It is a long way, yeah.
Do we have?
We do have Facebook questions here. So there's an anonymous person from Montreal, and they say, I'm a veteran experiencing signs of PTSD. While I await a mental health assessment, where can I learn more about treatments like cannabis?
Well, with cannabis, I think going online and reaching out to people like myself on Veteran Guerrilla Radio, and also Scott Casey and the crew on Military Minds, which is the biggest peer support-based network in the world dealing with veterans' PTSD. There are people that can point that individual in the right direction to start off on the right foot with it, and not just dive into it.
Well, as you said, that's the key, because you can mess yourself up the first time, and then you're scared off of it altogether, even if it could help you.
We have another one. Megan asks, what are the concerns for use of cannabis in veterans? Are there concerns?
Well, we just, it's funny with soldiers, they're like, before I used it, my first thought about marijuana is like, I got to put on some riot gear and run out some hippies or something. Like, we all have this stigma. And there's been a horrible stigma towards cannabis for, you know, last century.
Right.
And you just really have to get around that. We have to break that stigma. That's one of the key things. What was the question again? I got a traumatic brain injury, I forget stuff.
It's, what are the concerns with use of cannabis? Are there concerns as a veteran because maybe you are already on medications? Is there
conflict, worried about
are there
using
anything like
pharmaceuticals with that? I don't think so. You know, I think there's enough leadership in the veteran community that are endorsing it and who have tried it, like myself using it, and then know it works. There is confidence that it's something that can help. It's just unfortunate that a great deal of the people that are needing this right now are still technically on paper still serving, and within that construct they can't try it. So their only option in that period is to go to the pharmaceuticals. And I'm not dissuading the pharmaceuticals necessarily, because some people it actually does work out.
Everyone's different. Aaron, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. Tell the folks again, the show on Facebook?
Veteran Guerrilla Radio is our working group that we do all the outreach and updates on the lawsuit.
Awesome, excellent.
And thank you so much for serving our country as well.
It's my pleasure. I miss it.
Thanks for sharing.